What you're about to watch is a painting process video I filmed especially for my Patreon members in early September. I would never usually share Patreon content on YouTube, but I thought it might be a good idea to show a wider audience just one example of the type of video they can expect to see as a patron. The details are in the description beneath the video, and I hope you enjoy it. As usual, a huge thank you to my wonderful patrons for their incredible support of both me and my work. Hi patrons, so this is the second part of the art process where I'm working on the first painting from a new series that I'm doing called The Garden. So these were inspired by, or are inspired should I say, by some gardens that I visited this summer. One of them was Paynes Hill in Surrey and the other was Helmingham Hall Gardens in Suffolk. It's also kind of inspired a little bit by gardens in general and my mum's garden. She has this lovely cottage garden where there are lots of layers of plants, and so that kind of inspired me for this series. I think I talk a little bit more about the inspiration for the series in the first video. So we've got to this stage where I'm actually starting to layer now, so I wanted to add all sorts of different branches and leaves and bushes, and I didn't have a super clear idea of how this was going to look. I just wanted it to evolve a little bit as I went along, so I basically thought I would just add different elements where I kind of felt that they would work, and if I really didn't like it then I would paint over it, which is one of the great things about acrylic gouache, is that you can paint over anything that you're not happy with, unlike watercolour.
The longest-serving monarch in the history of the United Kingdom, and the commanding presence in British public life for more than 8 decades. She died at Balmoral in Aberdeenshire today at the age of 96. The Queen's eldest son, Charles, at the age of 73, has become king. The Queen visited the Irish Republic back in 2011. She was the first British monarch to visit the Irish Republic. It was a hugely successful meeting. I've got a very warm welcome there. Her Majesty, says President Higgins, served the British people with exceptional dignity. Issued this statement, which of course will be welcomed by Charles as the new king as well. He says, "May Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II rest in peace and rise in glory." Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, as she had done before, she reminded us of a deep truth about ourselves, says the Archbishop. "We are a people of hope who care for one another." A very warm tribute and a sincere tribute from the Archbishop himself.
I realised when I was editing this footage that I had the BBC News on in the background, and I thought for once I won't cut the sound, I'll leave you the background sound of the studio. And so it was basically me working while listening to the news that the Queen had just died, and I kind of thought that that was a historic moment, so I've left it in this video. At this stage you can see that I have decided, for reasons that even I don't understand, to add some darker patches to this tree. You can probably guess that it doesn't end well. So at this stage I was getting really quite annoyed at this piece. I remember that this day I had a migraine. I think this is the day after the Queen died now, and I had a migraine and I was trying to just do something to this painting but nothing was working. And so I decided to get the dark green paint again. I mixed up this colour and I just went over the entire tree. So basically undoing all of that work with all of those little tiny dashes, little strokes that I'd put in, all of the detail. I'm basically covering it up, and it hurts my heart to watch it, to be honest. But we know that it all turns out well in the end. I'm going to tell you that now. Spoiler alert. This painting turns out well in the end. So don't worry too much about what I'm currently doing to it. Now I'm having to add the branches again, or the tree trunks, and yeah, at this point I was questioning what the heck I was doing. I wish I had never experimented with putting the dark patches in. I don't know why I felt like the tree needed them, but it really didn't. So yeah, I'm just basically redoing everything and trying to make it good again. But I remember at this stage just feeling like this painting wasn't going in the direction that I wanted it to go in. Now I look at it, I really like it. So it's strange that you go through these stages with a painting. I often think that it's because when you're working on the piece, you're looking at it so intently and you're staring at it for hours. And I think that that does something weird to your brain. And even if something looks really good, you can think that it looks bad because you have studied it so intently that you notice any tiny flaw that maybe other people wouldn't notice. You kind of get tired of looking at it as well. I think it gets old to your eyes. So it's best just to leave it for a while and come back afresh a few days later, which is actually what I did with this one. I approached it with a fresh perspective. I felt better having left it for a few days. Sometimes you just need a bit of distance from things, and when I came back to it, I was determined to finish this piece and just continue through to the end, not be discouraged. But it was like trying to work through that moment when I felt the painting wasn't going right, when I felt it looked ugly and not how I wanted it to look. Of course, I can see now it doesn't look ugly, but I think it was because the image I had in my head wasn't quite what was coming out onto the paper. And sometimes when that happens, you can feel like just giving up. Well, I can, because I feel like I can't create what is in my head, and that frustrates me. It was, I think, so much better for me having left it a few days. I feel like in the end it turned into a more successful painting because I just had that break from it. By the way, for these tiny details, the brush I'm using is a Arte Prolene Series 101 round brush, and I usually use size 30 or 40. These brushes are my go-to brushes. They have been for years for doing details. I use them for watercolour, for traditional gouache, for acrylic gouache as I am here, and even sometimes for acrylic on canvas if I want to do really fine details. So they're good for many different paints. They last for absolutely ages if you look after them, and you can actually get them from Jackson's. So if you're interested in getting them, they're the Arte Prolene brushes. I mentioned in the first video the paints I'm using, but I'm going to mention them again in this one in case you haven't seen the first video. They are the Holbein acrylic gouache, which is called Holbein Acryla gouache, and the Turner version, which is called Turner Acryl gouache. Now, I really like using both of these. I've used the Holbein ones for years, so they're consistently good. The colours are excellent. I really like the formulation of them, and I think in my experience they're a little bit more opaque than the Turners, or at least some of the Turner colours. I've recently started using, in the past year or so, the Turner version, and I am loving it because the colours are just so beautiful. They tend to be a little bit more muted. They're a little bit more my kind of colour palette, really. I don't like the formulation quite as much as the Holbein, so both have their pros and cons, but they work really well together, so I'm enjoying using them together in my paintings now. And yeah, it's still one of my favourite mediums ever. Brilliant for layering. You can work over it quite quickly because it dries really quickly, and you don't disturb the layers beneath, because in that respect it dries like acrylic. Once it's dry, you can't re-wet it. So if you like working in layers like I do, it's ideal for that. And yeah, it still has that lovely velvety matte finish that gouache paint has. So best of both worlds, really. Usually several times during a painting session, I'll just stop and sit back and just look at where I'm at that particular moment. Quite a lot of my painting time is actually me kind of decision making and not wanting to rush into certain things, because as you can see earlier, when I rushed in to adding those dark patches on the tree, it didn't work out well. So it's good to just take a moment and hold it at arm's length. So hold the painting at arm's length, or if you're working at an easel, just stand back from the painting and just really take a moment to look at it. And you can kind of usually see what it needs. And at this point, I decided to add some extra bushes in the background. So yeah, I'm just gradually building up the layers here, bit by bit. I'm always changing things as I go along, and you'll see that these little flowers in the corner actually disappear. I did quite like them, but I just felt like they didn't work with the overall feeling of the piece, so I got rid of them. I actually left one little tiny one though, but yeah, they were covered up by a bush in the end. So this is how it looks finished. This is the first piece from the New Garden series completed. I look forward to working on more from this series as well and seeing how they evolve as I go along. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are currently about 30 videos, different art process videos, sketchbook videos, art materials videos on my Patreon, as well as podcasts and other posts as well. So go and check it out. I'll put the address on the screen now. And if you did enjoy this, please give it a thumbs up. Every time you give my videos a like, it really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, helps my videos to be seen by more people. And yeah, leave any comments, questions in the comment section below. Okay, everyone, I hope to see you over on Patreon perhaps. If not, I'll see you on YouTube soon. Bye for now.